I live in Boston, America. My name is Sarah, and I am telling this in my own voice because I am done letting anyone else explain me. On the evening of my parents' 27th anniversary, the wind off the harbor slid under my coat. Through the restaurant's tall windows, candlelight lifted across glassware, and sparklers curled like silver thread. I had missed the song and the first toast. I put my hand on the brass handle and promised myself, be polite, not pliable. Inside, the room glowed warm, light that softens faces, but not prices. I walked past framed sailboats and found the long table, where silver balloons shaped like a 2 and a 7 tugged at their ribbons. My mother, Linda, reached toward me as if conducting an entrance. She kept her smile wide for the table and squeezed my fingers for show, then pressed a folded slip of paper into my palm. My father, Robert, lifted his glass a half-inch, as if toasting the word finally. My sister, Chloe, sat with one ankle hooked over her knee, phone tilted to catch the flattering light. 2 neighbors from Providence had come for the party. They clapped when I slid into my chair. The last one to the party pays the bill, Chloe chimed, bright as a commercial. My mother's smile did not change, but her eyes did, sharpening the way eyes do when a plan lands as planned. I opened the paper. The bill listed its triumphs in crisp type. 2 prime steaks, a sea base big enough to name, a pyramid of oysters, a ring-shaped cake, coffee, tax, and service. The numbers lined up on the right as if standing at attention. At the bottom, the total did not blush. $2,900. My mouth went dry. That morning, I had paid rent, the electric bill, and my student loan, each click a promise to my future self. I thought of the oil bill waiting at home, the coat zipper that stuck, and the 3 simple meals I had planned for the week. My mother's hand hovered, palm up, as if waiting for a wallet to appear out of the air. Chloe leaned closer, perfume sweet and sharp. "You're just our ATM," she said, as if repeating a family nickname. Polite laughter skimmed the table. I did not laugh. The word ATM rang, metallic and hollow. I remembered other folded papers and the same bright smile. The roof repair for the old house in Providence, $4, $600 on my card. The television rescued when no interest turned into fire. The dental emergency. The weekend in New York renamed a reset. The rental car that had to be returned full of gas and excuses. I had been paying in dollars and in silence. Tonight, I ran out of both. "Can you put on your card, honey?" my mother asked, voice low and steady, still smiling for the room. My father glanced at me with his familiar helplessness, the expression that arrived whenever my mother's wants were promoted to family needs. The neighbors arranged their faces into polite interest, as if watching the weather and hoping it would pass. I pressed my thumb to the fold and felt the grit of paper. I thought about the map of America pinned inside my kitchen cabinet, the train lines I wanted to ride, the cities I meant to visit when I stopped bleeding out on duties I never chose. I wanted America to be mine and Europe to remain a choice. "Not this time," I said. The words were small and plain, but they moved like a key in a lock. The table went quiet. The server approaching with espresso slowed, then stopped. Chloe blinked as if I had misread my line. "Sarah," my father said, soft and warning, "we'll settle up later." But later had become a tunnel with no exit and a floor made of me. I lifted the slip so everyone could see it, then tore it cleanly in half. The rip sounded like cloth. I tore the halves into quarters, then eighths, until a pale drift of paper settled on the empty dessert plate like fresh snow. I was neat because I would not be accused of making a mess when the mess had lived here for years, invisible and heavy. "This is not my debt," I said. My voice shook once, then steadied. I didn't agree to it. I won't pay for what I didn't choose. I am not your machine. My mother's smile vanished. Her lips formed a controlled circle. Chloe's cheeks flushed. One neighbor examined his hands. "You're embarrassing yourself," my mother hissed, letting the whisper carry the edge her smile had hidden. "Sit down, pay, and we'll talk." "I've been embarrassed enough," I said. I slid one arm into my coat and felt the lining catch on my bracelet like a small tug from the past. For a moment, I saw the old blue house in Providence, The maple tree out front, the third stair that creaked, the front door that swelled in summer and stuck in winter until we leaned our shoulders against it together. That door had taught me the shape of a push. I thought about Europe, still a postcard on the inside of my mind, and how I might go one day, but how my life was here in America and how the first trip I owed myself was simply from habit to honesty. My chair scraped the floor as I stood. I wanted to say something graceful that would let them keep their dignity, but I was fresh out of favors.
"Good night," I said.
Figured out together. The server stepped aside with visible relief, as if I had lifted a tray from her hands. Outside, the wind met me like cold water, then clean. I stood a moment and listened to tires hiss and gull cry, the tide tapping its knuckles against wood. The city did not care what I had refused. It only kept breathing. I turned toward the station. Each step sounded like a sentence I owed myself. I had chosen my name over their comfort, my future over the habit of yes. The night felt like air, not judgment, and I kept walking. The call came a week later while I was at my desk, trying to fix a spreadsheet that kept breaking. My phone buzzed with an unknown number from Boston. I almost sent it to voicemail, but something in me said answer. A calm voice spoke when I did. "This is Stephen Harris from Seaport Bank. Is this Sarah?" I said yes and sat up a little straighter. He cleared his throat and said, "We need to discuss several loans in your name." My stomach dropped, the way an elevator drops when you think it will stop, and it doesn't. "What loans?" I asked. He read the figures in a steady tone. A $38,000 personal loan, a $12,500 credit line, and a $9,200 store card. All opened within the last 6 months, he added, as if listing items in a tidy box. None of them was mine. I could hear my own breath in the quiet that followed. I told Stephen there had to be a mistake. He did not sound shocked, only careful. "If it's not you," he said, "you should come in with your ID so we can review the files." He gave me a time that day. I told my manager, Henry, that I had to step out for something urgent. He looked at my face and did not ask for more. On the walk to the branch, I kept replaying his words. I tried to think of some mix-up, a number typed wrong, a card cloned for a tank of gas. But the numbers were too big, and there were 3 accounts, not one. The air felt thin. I told myself to focus on what I could do next. In America, paper speaks. If the paper was wrong, I would show it. The Seaport Bank branch smelled like lemon cleaner and printed forms. Stephen Harris met me in the lobby. He was tall, in a navy suit that had seen many long days. We shook hands and sat at a desk behind a glass wall. He pulled up my file and then slid a stack of copies toward me. "These are the applications," he said. I saw my name. I saw my address. I saw a signature that tried to be mine and failed. My real signature has a quick hook on the end and a clean line at the end. This one sagged, as if it did not know where to stop. There were photocopies of an ID that looked like mine at a glance, but did not stand up to a second look. The photo was older. The font was off. Stephen watched me study the pages. "You're sure this isn't you?" he said. "I'm sure," I said, and I heard my voice steady itself. We went line by line. The personal loan had gone to an account that shared my last name but was not mine. The credit line had paid a medical bill I had never seen. The store card had shipped a giant television and a fancy sound system to my parents' house in Providence, the same gray house where I once counted the maple leaves on late summer days. There were delivery notes and a signed receipt with my name. The strokes were slow, careful, wrong. "We can flag this as suspected fraud," Stephen said. "But you should also file a police report and freeze your credit. It will help when we reverse charges and when this goes to court." He printed an internal memo that said, "Customer reports identity theft, signatures inconsistent, documents appear altered." It felt like reading a report on a stranger who lived inside my name. When I stepped back onto the sidewalk, the sky was the dull white you get before rain. I called the non-emergency police line and asked what to do. They told me to come by the station with the papers and my ID. I went, I waited, and I spoke to Officer Blake, who had kind eyes and a tired pen. He took notes and gave me a case number. "Keep every paper," he said, and give copies to your bank and your lawyer." "I will," I said, though I did not have a lawyer yet. I stood near the vending machine to call the credit bureaus and put a freeze on my file. The hold music played and played, but I stayed on because this was what owning my name looked like now. Time, forms, and a steady voice that did not shake. That night, I sat at the small table in my South Boston apartment and laid the papers out like a map. The numbers glared up at me. I wrote the amounts on sticky notes. $38,000, $12,500, $9,200. I wrote the dates. I wrote Providence House next to the store card. Then I looked up a lawyer. I chose a woman whose reviews used words like clear and firm. Her name was Ava Morales. When she answered, her voice matched the reviews. I told her what had happened, from the call to the forms to the officer's case number. She listened without cutting in. Then she told me what we would do. "We will file a police report addendum with the documents," she said. "We will send dispute letters to the bank and the store. We will freeze your credit, which you've started. We will draft a civil complaint. And we will make sure you do not pay $1 for what you did not take." After I hung up, I cried. Not loud, not long, just a clean cry that tasted like salt and wakefulness. I washed my face and made tea. I opened a fresh notebook and wrote a list with boxes to tick. File report copy. Send letters. Scan everything. Call Stephen to confirm flags. Talk to HR about any payroll hold if needed. I wrote a line at the bottom. "My name is mine." It looked simple on the page. It felt like lifting a weight I had been taught to carry without question. I thought about the old rules at my parents' house. Keep the peace, be the helper, pay now, ask later. I had lived by those rules for years, and they had kept me small. Now I was learning new rules that belonged to me and to America too. Write it down, sign it right, push back when you must. Before sleep, I stood by the window and looked at the city lights. Boston was still busy, even late, even tired. I thought about the party, the bill, the way the room had laughed. I thought about the word ATM and how it had landed like a slap. I thought, too, about a girl who once traced the shape of Europe on a paper map and dreamed of trains and bridges. That dream was still mine, but it would not come from silence. It would come from work, from law, from saying no and meaning it. I closed the curtain and set my phone on the nightstand. In the morning, I called Stephen Harris to thank him for his help and to confirm the fraud flags. He said he had already started the process. "It may take time," he said. "Do not lose your case number." I added his words to my list. I told Henry the first might be in and out for a few days, and he said, "Do what you need, Sarah." At lunch, my coworker Mia asked if I was okay. I told her the truth in one sentence. She squeezed my arm and said, "Good for you for fighting." I felt a small, steady warmth start in my chest. This was not the life I had wanted, but it was the one I had, and I was going to hold it with both hands. I picked up my pen and kept going. Court moved like winter, slow for weeks, then sudden in one hard rush. Ava Morales met me on the stone steps with a firm nod and a folder under her arm. "We speak with paper and fact," she said, and the words steadied me. Inside, the air smelled like floor wax and old books. My parents stood by the wall with their lawyer, Martin Hale, a gray-suited man who seemed to enjoy small size. My sister, Chloe, kept her eyes on her phone. Our neighbor Marla had come to watch. She slid close and whispered, "Family is family," as if that made a debt less real. I did not answer. I looked at the seal on the wall, the word America in a ring of stars. I told myself I belonged here as much as anyone else. We took our places. The clerk called the case. The bailiff, Owen Price, told us to rise. Judge Bennett entered and sat with quiet care, the way someone sits to read a story that will not be fun. The judge's face was calm, almost kind, but the eyes were sharp. "We will keep this simple," the judge said. "Who signed? Who spent? Where did the money go?" The question sounded like doors I had already walked through in my mind. My hands were cold, but my spine felt straight. Stephen Harris from Seaport Bank testified first. He spoke in clean lines, no extra words. He showed the loan forms, The shaky signature that tried to be mine, the mismatched ID font, the account numbers the money that fell into. He pointed to the addresses for the store card shipments, a television and a sound system delivered to the gray house in Providence, the house with green shutters and a maple tree out front. The delivery slip carried my name in slow, careful strokes that were not my own. Stephen did not look at me for comfort or at my parents for blame. He looked at the paper and let the paper speak. Ava asked short questions. Is the signature consistent with the one on the bank's file for Sarah? No. Did the funds enter an account held by Sarah? No. Did the store card goods go to her apartment in Boston? No, then she made the record clear with dates, amounts, and copies. $38,000 personal loan, $12,500 credit line, $9,200 store card. She set them in a neat row, like stones across a stream. I kept my eyes on the judge and breathed in counts of 4. When it was Martin Hale's turn, he leaned back as if this were a talk at a dinner party. He said words like misunderstanding and support. He said I had always helped my family and that this was no different, just larger. He asked Stephen if banks ever make mistakes. Stephen said yes, but not this one. Then Martin asked me if I loved my parents. The room pressed in. Love is not a signature, I said. My voice was soft, but the line felt strong. He asked if I had ever paid bills for the house in Providence. I said yes when I agreed and when I could, but I had not agreed to these loans. He tried to make my old kindness into consent. Ava rose and said, "Objection." The judge said, "Sustained." Ava brought me a copy of my real signature on file. She asked me to explain how I signed my name. I spoke about the quick hook on the N, the light lift before the last letter, the way my hand ends clean, not sagging. I said the forged line looked like someone learning from a picture, not from years of habit. It felt like a small thing to say out loud, but it was true, and truth in this room was the only tool I had. I thought of America again, not just a word on a seal, but a promise that a name can be kept. Judge Bennett took time, then spoke in measured phrases. The evidence shows identity misuse, unauthorized accounts, and goods shipped to an address not belonging to the plaintiff, the judge said. The bank's internal notes and the police report support the claim. The signatures are inconsistent. The funds did not flow to the plaintiff. The court finds for Sarah. The judge's pen moved. Restitution in the amount of $59,700 to the bank and the store, to be paid by the defendants. Civil fines for fraud and misuse totaling $10,000. Costs to the plaintiff. The numbers hung in the air like bells. Ava squeezed my hand once, hard. Stephen Harris nodded. A small nod that said he had seen this before and wished he saw it less. My mother covered her mouth. My father stared at the table with a blank face that looked like sleep. Chloe flushed red, then white. Marla sat very still, as if nursing the thought that love can live with truth. The bailiff called the next case. In the hallway, Martin Hale told my parents they could appeal, but his voice lacked heat. The paper had done its work. A week later, the notices started. Liens stacked up like bad mail. The old debts beyond the fraud, late taxes, a second mortgage, came due now that the shine had worn off. They could not pay. The house that had held us for so long was scheduled for auction. I went to Providence on a clear morning that smelled like cut grass. The gray house looked smaller than in my memory. The maple tree stirred, as if it knew us all by name. People stood on the sidewalk with bitter cards. A woman with a clipboard read the rules. I saw the dent on the porch rail, where I had once parked my bike too hard. A man in a denim jacket opened at $250,000. Another voice said $280,000. I lifted my card and said $295,000. My hands did not shake. The denim jacket man said $300,000. I said $310,000 and felt the number land in my chest like a weight I could lift. Sold, the auctioneer said, and the gavel fell. The sound was not loud, but it carried. I did not cheer. I did not cry. I signed papers while the sun slid higher. The clerk handed me the receipt and the temporary deed. The numbers were plain, the ink still wet. I walked to the sidewalk. put my palm on the porch post, and felt the grain of the wood I had once painted as a teenager for $20 and pizza. I did not feel triumph. I felt clean. When the sheriff posted the notice to vacate, my mother stepped out the door. Her hair was set just right, the way it had been for every holiday. "You would do this to us?" she asked, as if I had built the storm. My father stood behind her, smaller than I remembered. For a moment, I saw them as people who had made bad choices and then hid inside my name. I could see their fear. I could also see my life. "You did this to me," I said. My voice was not loud. It did not shake. "I won't carry it anymore." We stood like that for a few breaths, 3 people on a porch, a maple tree in the wind, a house changing hands under an honest sky. Then I stepped back and let the law do its work. I had chosen the hard road and walked it. In America, a name can be broken and be made whole again. I lifted the deed, felt its weight, and turned toward the door I had just won and would soon make new. I changed the locks the first morning the house was mine. The old key fought me the way it always had, then gave up with a sharp click. I walked through each room in slow steps, touching door frames and window latches, like I was learning a new language. The kitchen window is still stuck halfway up. The living room showed a pale rectangle where the giant TV had been. Dust lay in a soft line on the mantel where picture frames once sat. I opened the back door and let a square of cool air move across the floor. This was my house now. I was not the woman who paid a $2,900 bill to be mocked. I was the woman who held the deed. I made a list and started with the roof. Grace Parker, the contractor, showed up with a notebook and a calm look. "We can do this in a week if the weather holds," she said. Noah Reed, the plumber, checked the basement pipes and nodded at the old boiler like it was a neighbor. I signed simple, clear contracts. We set a budget: $6,800 for the roof patch and gutter work, $1,200 to fix the locks and add a deadbolt, $900 for the kitchen sink, and a small leak behind the tub. I paid deposits and kept every receipt in a zip bag. I had learned the hard way that paper is proof. Workmen came and went in clean lines. Hammers tapped, ladders hissed against siding, and a soft smell of new wood rose in the hall. The first night I slept there, the house spoke in old house sounds. Heating pipes ticked. The maple tree brushed the siding like a hand at the window. I kept the spare room shut and simple. My old bedroom stayed plain. A bed, a desk, a lamp, one clean drawer for the past and the rest for the future. In the living room, I placed a sofa, a chair, and a table big enough for work and dinner. I chose a soft white for the walls and a deep blue rug that did not try to impress anyone. I kept a rule for myself and wrote it on a card above the desk. My name is mine. My money is mine. My peace is mine. During the day, I called the utility companies to move the accounts into my name. The woman at the power company said, "Congratulations on the new place," and I said thank you and meant it. I checked the title insurance and filed the final court papers. I wrote a simple budget: $1,500 for the mortgage and taxes, $300 for utilities, $400 for repairs until the big items were done, $200 to start an emergency fund, and a small $50 line for flowers or a book because life needed a little beauty that asked for nothing in return. I cooked easy meals in the small kitchen: eggs, rice, soup, and ate at the table with the window open to the sound of leaves. People noticed the change. Ruth, the neighbor who had once given me lemonade when I was 8, waved from her porch and said the new paint made the shutters look young. The mail carrier, Jordan, learned my name fast and said he liked the maple shade in summer. On a Saturday, I dragged a box of old things into the yard: faded cards, broken cords, a stack of bills with my name from years when I said yes too fast. I kept 2 photos, one of me on a bike, one of the house in winter. The rest went into a contractor bag, and I tied the plastic with a hard, simple knot. Cleaning felt like law and like mercy at the same time. My parents tried to call. The first time I let it ring. The second time, I answered and spoke one line: "Send all words in writing to my lawyer, Ava Morales." My mother said my name the way she used to say dinner is ready, as if I might come running. I did not. I wrote a short letter through Ava that said what I could offer. No contact beyond mail about legal matters, no money, no open door. It felt cold to write it. It felt warm to mail it. Some losses ask you to walk backward. I chose not to. I could miss the idea of a family and still guard my front step. Those two truths could live in one small chest without tearing it apart. On clear evenings, I drove to New York City and sat on a bench near the river. People moved like a strong tide, fast, bright, full of plans. I would watch the water and think about a girl who once traced train lines on a paper map of Europe and dreamed of bridges and stations. I might go one day, I told myself. When I do, I will pay with my own card and choose my own seat. Until then, my story is here, in America, in a gray house with green shutters and a maple tree that keeps its own steady time. I have work to do and a life to keep clean. The porch needed paint, so Grace and I chose a simple gray. We sanded the rail where my bike had left a dent years ago and filled the mark, not to pretend it never happened, but to make room for what comes next. Noah swapped the rattling kitchen faucet for a plain one that did not sing. I hung a small bell by the back door, the kind that rings once when you come in and once when you go out. I liked the sound. It made leaving and returning feel like choices I owned. Friends asked if I missed my family. I said I missed who I thought they were. That is different. On Sunday mornings, I brewed coffee and read the paper at the table while the light moved across the floor. I sent $100 to a local clinic fund each month and labeled it "Thank you for rules." I kept a folder for the case with tabs for bank letters, court orders, and the final receipts. At the back, I slid one photo of the auction day, the porch post under my palm, the sun on the steps, the look on my face that said I was done being someone's open wallet. That look helped on hard days. One night, I stood in the doorway between the hall and the living room and said the thing I had learned aloud, just to hear it. They took my name, I took it back. The words were simple. They were also true. The house held the sound, and then let it go. My life did not need grand gestures. It needed clean choices, honest bills, and doors that closed when I told them to. I turned off the light and listened to the maple leaves brush the siding like quiet rain. When people ask how it ended, I tell them it did not end. It turned. The fight was the hinge. The law was the tool. The house is the proof. I did not throw my life away to keep a lie. I walked out once, and then I walked home.